Most of us have been there, driving down a desolate stretch of highway at 2 a.m., desperate for a coffee or a place to rest, when a brightly lit gas station or motel lobby emerges from the dark. It feels like an oasis, a beacon of safety. Inside, the lone worker stands behind a thick counter, surrounded by automatic locking doors and a ceiling dotted with security cameras. It looks secure, but those physical barriers only create the illusion of a safe zone. The very lighting designed to make these buildings inviting creates a profound vulnerability. This diagram illustrates a principle called asymmetrical visibility. When a heavily illuminated square, like our store, sits entirely surrounded by darkness, the sightline for anyone inside abruptly hits a solid wall at the glass. But looking at the secondary sightline from the outside, the dynamic flips entirely. A person standing directly in the pitch-black exterior can easily pierce that glass, watching every single movement inside the building with perfect clarity. This setup strips the night worker of their situational awareness. You cannot react to a threat you cannot see, and the intense interior lighting ensures the employee is unable to monitor the outside world. The architecture of 24-hour businesses is engineered to attract late-night customers, not to protect the employees. By prioritizing that glowing storefront, the layout inadvertently traps the isolated worker in a brightly lit cage, turning them into a captive, highly visible target. That lack of exterior visibility is compounded by the physical blind spots built directly into the perimeter. At 3 a.m., while a clerk was mopping the back of the store, a brand new car with no license plates sat idling outside. This blueprint of the station reveals exactly how the men in that car weaponized the building's layout. They parked in a specific red zone, the one angle of the lot entirely blocked by an exterior wall, completely invisible from the register. They were lying in wait. The building's layout offered her no protection. The intruders eventually threw the car in reverse and fled at the same time a group of late-night customers pulled up to the pumps, disrupting the encounter before it could escalate. Even when the perimeter is secured by automated doors and cameras, those systems are easily exploited. A motel clerk working a quiet overnight shift let a man in after hours because he appeared entirely ordinary. The intruder bypassed the locked front doors without breaking a single pane of glass. He simply used the established rules of the space against the clerk, presenting a stolen credit card to smoothly gain legitimate entry to the lobby. Once inside, the security cameras proves utterly useless as a defense. Cameras only record, they do not intervene. The clerk just watched the feeds as the man wandered the halls, standing motionless outside guest rooms and staring intently from dark corners where the lobby lighting failed to reach. A panopticon is a space where occupants are constantly observed, and here, the buzzed doors and camera feeds function exactly like that. They create a passive system that merely documents a worker's extreme vulnerability, offering no actual protection once an intruder has crossed the threshold. The psychological consequence of this architecture is that it forces employees into strict, highly predictable routines. A 24-year-old gas station clerk named Meredith learned this when an older man named Paul began appearing at her store in the dead of night. Because the storefront is an expansive wall of transparent glass, the entire shop floor acts as an involuntary stage. Paul sat out in the dark parking lot, watching her every move, meticulously cataloging her exact habits, how she wrote on a whiteboard, and the pacing of her shifts. The breaking point came when Paul casually mentioned her safety protocols. He noted that she locked the door to the back room at exactly 2 a.m. every single night. He was mapping her precise movements, turning her required routine into a schedule for his obsession. The final architectural failure happens when the innermost barrier is breached. Daniel, another overnight motel clerk, relied completely on a back-office rounge and an electronic front desk bell as his ultimate safety net. If he was in the back, the bell would tell him exactly when someone entered the lobby. At 2 a.m., that warning system failed him. The bell rang loud and clear, but when Daniel walked out to the main office, the lobby was entirely empty. The doors were locked and the parking lot was dead quiet. 15 minutes later, the bell rang a second time. Still, nobody was there. Daniel sat in the chair directly behind the front counter to catch whoever was pulling the prank. Just as he started to doze off, a pale hand reached up from directly beneath the desk and pressed the silver call bell. The intruder had bypassed all external and internal defenses, crouching silently in the tiny space under his counter the entire time. When the innermost barrier falls like that, the entire illusion of the safe zone collapses. The locked doors and warning bells mean absolutely nothing when you are completely defenseless against a threat that is already hiding right beside you. Surviving a boundary failure like this leaves a lasting psychological aftermath on the workers. The physical threat might eventually leave, but the terror stays anchored to the environment itself. Even after a restraining order forced Meredith to transfer to a new town over 2 hours away, the damage was permanent. To this day, simply seeing headlights idling in the dark behind her car triggers a spike of intense fear. Daniel is permanently haunted by the layout of his own workspace. He cannot look at a standard, brightly lit front desk without bracing himself, half expecting an intruder's hand to emerge from the dark, empty void underneath the counter. The night shift strips away the protective social contracts and steady foot traffic of the daytime. What remains fully exposed is the deeply flawed, intensely fragile design of 24-hour commercial spaces. The next time you find yourself pulling up to a glowing convenience store or a quiet motel lobby at 2 a.m., look past the bright signs and the stocked shelves. That employee standing behind the counter is a solitary human being, surviving the night inside a fragile glass cage,